Welcome back to another episode of Fox Can Fix It, where today I'm finally going to show you the new project car I picked up that I didn't need, but I found, and I just had to have. What I picked up, it's not exactly one of the most popular vehicles. In fact, it's a very controversial vehicle. And it's not from a popular era, it's from an era just after the muscle cars. And, well, things weren't exactly great back then. And what I'm talking about is the El Camino. El Camino. Specifically, this El Camino is a 1975 model, and I know that because that's what the VIN and the title tell me. I really don't know much about the difference between the 73 and 77s, other than like sometime in 76, after a certain trim level, you got double stack square headlights instead of round. So I know this is 73 to 75. That's really it. Somebody's done a little bit of customization because I don't think El Caminos generally said Chevelle on the grill. That should be a bow tie. So somebody swapped out a Chevelle grill, and I'm okay with that. Anybody else think this looks sort of like Chick Hicks from Cars with the mustache? It is the two-tone, which makes it a classic, and I know that because it said classic right on the side. All the chrome is here, the chrome rockers at the bottom, the chrome along the top. It's even got rally wheels on it, which I really like, but they're a little bit too small. I think they're 235/60s, and I think a 235/70 would be better, right, Evie? She agrees. This car came out of California, specifically somewhere around Rio Vista, California. And here's how we know it's out of Rio Vista, specifically from Able Chevrolet Pontiac Buick, which is still in business, but I don't believe they sell Pontiacs anymore. Look how thick all these registration stickers are. This is probably, I mean, there's 20 years of registration stickers there, which is pretty cool. I mean, you know, doesn't help the car any, but it's pretty cool. Also, as you can see, it's got the California dash installed, which is nice, so I'm not going to have to do anything with that. And it has factory California paint. Burned all the way through in lots of spots, but best thing about these vehicles, especially out of the South or Southwest, or we're out of California, which is neither South nor West, it's West, but it's a whole different thing, is almost no rust. This thing has a completely solid frame. There are only two little rust spots on it that are anything more than surface rust. They're the most common spot for any vehicle of this era. Right behind the rear wheels, you've got rust hole right here, easy to fix, and you've got it just starting here on the other side. It happens. What are you going to do, you know? Look at that. Here's another reason you know it's mid-70s. Unleaded fuel only, because they still made leaded and unleaded. One thing I'm surprised to see out of this vehicle is all of this rubberized plastic trim is still in place. None of it is missing. Usually, especially out of California or someplace like that where it's nice and dry and hot, all of these filler pieces are going to be dead. These are all intact and perfect. Still soft even, not brittle. That's awesome. Now, there's three things I do know about this generation of El Camino because I looked them up on Wikipedia. And what I know is that these are the longest, widest, and the heaviest of any generation of El Camino, which just makes them that much better. There's more to go around. Let's take a look at the interior of this thing. Another oddity about this is that the door hinges are not worn out yet. Look at that. And it closes just like brand new. Right, Evie? Of course it does. Evie would like to give you a tour of the interior. The vehicle is not without its problems. It currently has a heater core that has gone out, which is why this ashtray is out. And much of the dash trim has already been removed. But don't worry, that's all back here, including some spare pieces, because some of this trim is broken and dry rotted, which, you know, it's going to happen. It's got a factory California headliner in it. Yeah, it's solid. It'll be fine. It has the remains of one sun visor, and this one seems to be missing, but I've got two red ones that are worthless. It does have the center seat belt, and that does work, so that's good. It has AM/FM cassette radio, not factory, but that's okay. It looks like it was installed not too terribly. Also, this does have the optional Econominder vacuum gauge that tells me that I'm getting bad fuel mileage every time I drive it. And it's a factory AC car. Probably not charged, but everything's there. So maybe, just maybe, we can get it to work. Also, for some reason, the horn is in silent mode. We're going to have to fix that too. One thing I find out driving this thing, because yes, it runs and drives, is that all of these gauges work. Gas gauge works, temp gauge works, volt gauge works. The only gauge that doesn't seem to be working is this one. I don't know why, but we're gonna have to look into that. Evie, you keep an eye on things in here. I'm gonna go check under the hood. And now we've done it. It's a V8, and looking at the sticker here, it says it could be a 350 or a 400, but it is a 4-barrel, which is a good thing because you could get this in a 350 2-barrel. It also came with an inline 6, which you wouldn't want to see. Now, I ran the VIN number on it. It is an L code, which makes it the 350. It is not 400, which is so sad, but is what it is. Everything is here. Every single vacuum line, every single piece of junk emissions component is still on this vehicle. The brakes seem to work okay, which is amazing. I figured that vacuum booster or master cylinder would be garbage. It is not. It still has the intake hose, and that's not dry rotted, which is very strange for California. Southwest, usually this is just a metal coil and no fabric left. Side post battery. I forget when GM went to that, but I hate these. And there's a 350 somewhere down under all that garbage. A couple things I do know about 1975 for GM as a transition year. It was the first year that had mandatory disc brakes up front. It was the first year that the hood release was inside the vehicle as opposed to just outside under the hood. And it was the first year that dogs approved of bench seats. Right? Mm-hmm. Since I've got this door open, you can check this out. Look at that. Both doors look like this on the bottom. Great thing about a California car. No rust. Look at the rockers. Look at the rockers. One other thing I know about El Caminos is every single El Camino from the first year to the last year is a full frame vehicle. None of them are unibody. On Rancheros, some of them were unibody. I think they went full frame, then unibody, then back to full frame. Every El Camino ever made is a full frame vehicle. Tailgate works perfectly. Look at the bed of this thing. If this was in the Midwest, this thing would be rotted and just full of holes. But being out of California, again, you got saved and just the paint burnt off of everything, which is totally fixable. Way easier than fixing rust. I don't know if these are the optional factory cargo hooks or if those were put in later. There are 6 of them, plus there's a definite non-factory eye bolt way up there. But could be factory, who knows? Look at that. Another thing I like about this generation of El Camino is these taillights, the sort of individual bucket taillights. They remind me of the Corvette taillights. See what I mean? 2 individual buckets, stoplight and backup light, and then turn signal. Yeah, very similar. I think it's time to start it. Right, Evie? It runs perfectly. I drove this thing 3 hours back from the middle of Indiana all the way to Cincinnati. No issues. Well, slight issues, other than it smokes a little on startup after it sits, which is probably valve seals. Brakes are a little bit soft, and it did have an intermittent miss in it, which turned out to be a plug wire not plugged all the way into the spark plug, which will happen. But would you look at that? The odometer says 84,000 miles on it, and it's a 5-digit odometer, so we don't know if it's 184,000 or 284,000, but it sure runs like it's 84,000. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments about how many miles are on this thing. Now, maybe you're asking yourself, why in the world would anybody want an El Camino? El Camino. Well, there's a couple reasons. First of all, sentimental value. My grandparents had a brown El Camino that was a 73 to 77. I'm not sure exactly which year it was, but I remember very distinctly growing up, they had a dark brown El Camino. I don't think it was two-tone, and talking to my parents, they agree. They think it was solid brown, but they had one. And my best memory of that is this. We used to stand up behind the seat on the floor and just hold on to the bench seat while my grandma and grandpa drove down the road, because it was the 1980s, and that was okay. I still remember that, and I had to be like 6 or 7 at the time. Another reason that I like this El Camino, it's not quite a muscle car, but it's a muscle car. This thing is based on the Chevrolet Chevelle, but the good thing about this muscle car is you can put a lot of stuff in the back. It's basically a truck. It's better than a mini truck from the 80s, even though I really like my mini truck from the 80s, but it's not quite a full-size truck. And what I like about that is I'm a shorter guy. Full-size truck, it's right here for me to work on. Bend over the fender. This one, way down here. I can reach the center of this without needing a ladder. I like that. So, now that we know I've got an El Camino, and why I have an El Camino, what are we going to do with this El Camino? Well, There's some immediate plans, and there's some short-term plans, and there's some long-term plans. The immediate plan is we are going to get this thing cleaned up with like some SOS pads and Scotch-Brite and get all of the dirt and burn paint and everything off of it, and then polish it. Hopefully, maybe Poppy's Patina or Sweet Patina or somebody, maybe they see my video, maybe they don't, send me some free stuff. I'm willing to wait a few weeks, but not too long. And we've got to get that heater core fixed, even though it's summertime and I don't really need it. The dash is half apart. We should just go ahead and do that, definitely. Short-term plan is I want to take this thing on 1, maybe 2 days of power tour. 2 locations I'm looking at is the Louisville and the Indianapolis. They're both about the same distance from me. It's whatever I can get tickets for at this point. Definitely 1 day, maybe 2. Long-term plans, I want to maybe keep this thing and turn it into a tow rig. It's got a 350. 350s will tow. This thing does have pause traction. I'll show you. See that? Look at that. Pause traction. Now, while it is pause traction, I looked up the axle code, and it's a 273, which is terrible for towing, but great on the highway if you're not towing. So if we do turn it into a tow rig, it's probably going to need like a 323 or a 308. Somewhere around there. I think 355 would just be too much for it. And after that, who knows? So we get this thing cleaned up in the next 5 weeks before power tour, take it to power tour, and then try to keep it and turn it into a tow rig for the next project, which who knows what that's going to be or when that's going to be. So I got to get this thing ready because projects can happen at any time. Right, Evie? Good girl. Evie really seems to like this. When I brought it home the other day, she actually fell asleep in the bench seat. I was looking for her for about 20 minutes. She was dead asleep. That's going to do it for today. We've got ourselves an El Camino. El Camino. It runs, it drives, so the hard part is done. Now it's just a lot of cleaning and fixing, which I'm okay-ish at. And if you're okay-ish at it, you might as well give it a shot. All right, everybody. I got some dogs to play with, and we'll see you next time.